In the beginning of Genesis, chapter 9 has two verses that are stunningly countercultural in the ancient world, and at the same time, they're foundational to the Judeo-Christian moral vision. In their time and place, these revolutionary texts shouldn't even exist. I think that there's a reason that the Bible has survived in Western culture for millennia, and it's not only war and conquest. It's because it has verses like the two we'll talk about in this video. Verses that challenge the cultural and legal norms of the ancient Near East. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that the Bible consistently follows the spirit of these verses. It doesn't. But they do lay a foundation that is persistent enough so that it's embedded in how we think, so much so that we hardly notice their impact today. Let me read you the two verses I'm referring to. Genesis 9 verses 5 and 6. And indeed the blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every animal I will require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of each of his brother will I require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God he has made man. Now, just to be clear, the Hebrew word used for man in these verses is Adam, which in this context means human, not a person of the male sex. At first reading, these verses seem confusing and somewhat vindictive, all the talk about shedding blood, but those elements will become clear as we go along. To really understand them, let's step out of the Bible for a minute into the world they were written. Because if you were living in the ancient Near East, anywhere from Mesopotamia to Canaan to Egypt, justice didn't look like this. Justice back then was a tool of hierarchy. It worked differently depending on who you were. There were noblemen, there were commoners, there were slaves, and life didn't have the same value in the eyes of the law. Here's one example, the Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest legal codes we have. So here's how it worked. If you blinded the eye of a free person or a noble, one of your eyes was blinded. If you blinded the eye of a lower class person, you paid a fine. If you blind the eye of a slave, you pay half the slave's market value. Same crime, different penalties. Because the law wasn't built on the idea that all people were equal. It was built on class, on power. People were absolutely not equal. And that was normal. That was what was expected. Today there are still differences between justice for the wealthy and powerful and justice for the common person. But we expect more. And we feel a certain amount of outrage when the difference becomes obvious. Where do those ideas about justice come from? Well, they come in part from this passage in Genesis. It says no, that's not how it works. From the hand of every animal I will require it, and from man, yes, from his brother, I will require the life of man. That is a legal bombshell when you get beyond its awkward phrasing. No categories, no exceptions. It doesn't differentiate a king from a slave, a public quarrel from a family fight. You take a life, and God will require an answer. This is not just a religious idea. This is a radical moral claim. Every human life is sacred, and every person is accountable. Not to a human king, not to a tribal council, but to God. It even includes animals, which sounds strange at first. But in the ancient mindset, it means this law applied to all of creation. Nothing in Babylonian law sounds like that. Nothing in Assyrian law or Hittite law or Egyptian law. At the hand of every animal will I require it. This is astonishing. God is saying that even if a person is killed by an animal, there's still a moral consequence. Now, it's not about punishing animals like criminals. It's about a universe where human life always matters. Verse 5 then tightens the circle. And at the hand of man, at the hand of each one's brother, will I require the life of man. Now that's an echo of the Cain and Abel story. In that story, Cain asks, Am I my brother's keeper? Genesis 5 answers, yes, you are. What's also striking is what's not in the verse. There's no mention of tribe or race or social class or religious belief. There's no hint that some lives matter more than others. It's not survival of the fittest. It's not justice for the strong and silence for the weak. There's no talk of compensation and no scaling of penalties based on status like in the Code of Hammurabi. Instead, it's grounded in the idea that every person is made in the image of God. That's what verse 6 adds to verse 5. It tells us why every life matters. Not because of what someone owns or where they come from, but because their very existence reflects something sacred. Now this raises the question, who writes something like this, and when? Because that part may be the most surprising part of all. But before we dive into that, I think it would be useful to read all the verses I'm carving on this tablet. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As the green herb I give you everything. Only the flesh with its life, its blood, you shall not eat. And indeed the blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every animal will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of each of his brother will I require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God he has made man. And you, be fruitful and multiply. Swarm on the earth and multiply on it. And God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and with every living soul which is with you, fowl as well as cattle, and all the animals of the earth with you. All of that has gone out of the ark, every animal of the earth. And I establish my covenant with you, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by waters of a flood, and henceforth there shall be no flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant that I set between me and you and every living soul that is with you, for everlasting generations. I set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be for a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring clouds over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the clouds. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living soul of all flesh. And the waters shall not henceforth become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living soul of all flesh that is upon the earth. So who wrote verses 5 and 6, and when? They were probably written or finalized during or shortly after the Babylonian exile, one of the darkest moments in Israel's history. The city of Jerusalem had been destroyed. The temple, the spiritual heart of their world, was gone. The monarchy had collapsed, and many of the people had been taken into exile to Babylon. If there was ever a time to abandon high ideals, this was it. And yet this is what they wrote down. They envisioned at the beginning of a new start, when Noah steps out of the ark, a law that holds all people accountable equally. A law that places every life, even their enemies, under the same moral standard. It doesn't deny that the world is violent. It knows that the world is violent. But it says violence isn't the way it's supposed to be. Human life isn't disposable. And even if no one else is paying attention, God is. Think about what that means for a defeated people to write that. To write a story where the creator of the universe says, I will demand an answer for every human life. That's not just theology. It's a declaration that even in exile, even in suffering, even in defeat, you can still hold on to a vision of justice that doesn't bend to empire. Now, if you've read more of the Bible, you're probably thinking, wait a second. Doesn't this same Bible go on to describe wars, massacres, and even commands to wipe out entire populations? Yes, yes, it does. And that's definitely a tension. Genesis 5 gives us a vision of a world where every life matters. But other parts of the Bible reflect a world shaped by tribal survival, conquest, and even fear of outsiders. So, what do we do with that? The honest answer is that the Bible is wrestling with it. It doesn't always speak with one voice, it contains competing visions, some rooted in idealism, others shaped by trauma, by politics, history. Genesis 5 is part of that wrestling match. It pushes against the grain. It insists that justice isn't about who your tribe is or who your God favors. It's about being human. And the fact that this vision made it into the text and stayed there means that the conversation wasn't closed. It still isn't. But if you sit with it, if you take it seriously, it offers something the world still hasn't figured out. It says that no human is disposable. It's the kind of verse that could only have been written by people who have lost everything and still refuse to give up on the idea that the world should make moral sense. It's not the whole story of the Bible. It's not even the most famous part. But it might be one of the most important because it leaves us with a question. If human life is sacred, how should we live?